Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. First, I want to thank all of you for participating, not only by coming here and practicing with this community, but also joining online on Zoom over the past year and before. Please continue to help us if you can. We need your help. This doesn't generate a product or a service. Well, not in the traditional sense of you pay for this, you get that. But so something's happening here. If you value that, of course, continue to help us if you can. This morning, I want to talk about something that comes up occasionally and comes up actually quite often, a one-on-one with people who are direct students of mine. So, and it's something that I have probably not covered as enough. Or I think there's misunderstandings around it. So I'm sure there are. So I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to not only ask me questions, please don't hesitate. Please don't hesitate. If you have questions about this, make them very direct so that you can get a response that will be fundamentally helpful to you. And that is therapy, of which there are hundreds and hundreds of kinds of therapy. A few that are pretty common that we all know about. And when I say know about, I haven't studied therapy. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I barely had any formal training in anything other than this. But I've had half a century of this. So I don't know if you'd call me an expert. I wouldn't go that far. That's making a lot of assumptions. Let's just say that that's something I'm qualified to talk about a little bit. Whereas therapy, I can't say much about that, other than I have had a little bit of therapy myself in a relationship with a previous partner. Went to a therapist. I didn't think it was so helpful at the time, although I thought it helped her to some extent, gave her somebody to talk to. So I would like to start out by saying you should do whatever you need to do. I have people come to me. I don't discuss this publicly who do all kinds of things that maybe you would disagree with that aren't even therapy, that have to do with psychedelics, have to do with all kinds of ways of dealing with difficulty, with pain, or with confusion. And I'm not for or against anything in particular, other than I'm very biased about sitting meditation. And of course, wouldn't I be biased about the way that I teach it? Why would I teach a way that I don't particularly practice myself? So sometimes you might get the feeling that I think that somehow meditation is the only really valid thing to do is to do meditation, and the people that aren't doing meditation, that are just doing therapy, is somehow lesser humans or something, and that is just not true. And I'm not going to go in and say, well, although I've said this, well, maybe you're not ready for a sitting meditation and this is very, very hard to do, this practice. So I've said that before. I'm not going to harp on that today. So I would really appreciate any questions you have about that. That might help us go into it. It may interest some of you to know that I have several meditation students. A couple of them are fully ordained monks who are therapists who work with people all the time. That's how they generate their livelihood, and they're extremely good at it and are able to help people with the way the mind tends to work, it's similar to Buddhist practices, to actually, when you believe your thoughts, you tend to get wound up in them and fight and push and pull and try to find out who's right, who's wrong. So some of these therapies, I remember the early ones that I was reading about way back about the time I was getting interested in Buddhism, around 50 years ago, 60 years ago, somewhere in that area. Cognitive behavioral, I think, happened after that, but that's very interesting to me. And when I was teaching, and several of us were teaching at the local drug rehab, there was hundreds of people there, and they were using moral inventory, cognitive behavioral work, transactional analysis, all kinds of different things that help get into the structure of the way in which you're confusing yourself or buying into this and excluding that and so on, and give you different dynamics whereby you could possibly get some help there. So not against any of that. I don't really teach it, although sometimes it may look like that's what I'm doing. I don't know. I don't know how many we have. I think right now there's 4 people who are students of mine who actually That's their profession, is to be therapists. And I'm all about that. So even Trungpa Rinpoche, although he was very negative at the beginning of Naropa Institute and so on, I think he was just trying to draw some of his students back into the meditation arena rather than in the psychotherapy situation. But eventually, Naropa Institute started giving degrees in Buddhist psychology, and they're still doing that, to the best of my knowledge. So have some interaction here so we can get what it is that you would like to know, and I'm not sure what you'd like to know. Go ahead.
She's unbowing. Can finding ways to support our physical and emotional well-being also support our practice of meditation?
Yes.
She is unbowing. How can we relate to or move into those basic areas of just how we feel physically and emotionally that is supportive to getting to the cushion or practicing meditation?
It's a pretty wide one there. Any suggestions on how I should work with that question? Go ahead. Okay, so paraphrase yourself. Give me that question a little bit more. But look who you're asking.
Sometimes there's a fundamentalism that can come across from practitioners.
Yes.
That I've heard people say to me, I don't want to do it with therapy. I want to do it with meditation, as if they were opposed. And wondering could you just say something about working with the relative world, our emotions, our physical bodies that can support our practice?
So you may need to talk to a therapist. I have a lot, I don't know how many, I didn't count them, but a lot of students who had a therapist when they I became their meditation teacher. I didn't tell them to stop seeing therapy. Some of them share with me what's going on. Some of them don't. But I feel that's can be supportive. I think it's in different ways. A lot of it, I think, just depends on the chemistry you have with the therapist. You and the therapist really have good communication dynamics, and that's probably going to be helpful. Can you be more specific about your question?
Mm-hmm. One of the areas that's showing up is that some people are able to hear the instruction on shikantaza and resonate in such a way where they can go right into it. But sometimes the social conditions are so chaotic.
Yes.
That there needs to be some sort of gradual path. And I'm wondering if the gradual path can work in tandem with this more immediate approach of shikantaza.
Yes. And a person may even may do both, may do try a shikantaza for a while and then possibly go towards some kind of a more traditional therapeutic approach, of which there's hundreds of different ways. And the therapists that are here today, do we have any therapists here?
Kelsey and Senchu are online.
Oh, good. So Kelsey and Senchu, if you have any, if you have questions that can help bring us, help everybody. You have a question, Senchu?
Senchu bowing, with your teaching that comes up so often that there's nothing to do or nothing to fix.
Yes.
How can we engage with that teaching as a therapist or as someone in therapy? Bowing.
So first, it's your practice, it's your awareness practice. We aren't trying to get your clients or your patients or however you're referring to them to meditate necessarily. You've heard me say that. You don't necessarily tell them to meditate. If they gravitate towards that, then you might introduce it. But I say this over and over again. If I can't do anything at all, I think there's something I am pretty good at doing, and that's meeting everyone right where they're at. You come and sit in front of me, we won't be strangers. So, and this is something you already do. It's not a compliment. It's something you just are natural to sit down in front of people and be with them, meet them. So after a while, they begin to trust you and tell you things about what's happening in their mind stream or what's happening with their life. And it may look like you might need to work in the area that may show up as fixing. I just have to get rid of this. I have to stop this. I can't keep thinking this. Or the why questions. When you know why, you might have to do some why because dynamics with the person in order to actually, you could say, I don't know if this is a proper word, but lubricate the dynamics of communication so that when they're ready for it, if they're actually ready, they will ask questions that may take them deeper into the fundamental nature, capital F, fundamental nature of consciousness, which has nothing in it at all. But there might be a whole lot of windstorms and tornadoes in their personal consciousness that looks like their thought patterns. You have to meet them with that. You can't just say, oh, everything is empty of what you think. You can't start teaching Buddhist teaching to someone who is not ready to hear this. This has nothing to do with their intelligence level. It has nothing to do with how advanced you are or they are. That's something that can come up because they may feel that somebody's being evaluated or judged. But everybody, I mean, all the clients you have and all the students that I have, I guess you could call them clients in a way, but everybody has their own flavor. It's like being in Baskin Robbins. Everybody has a different flavor of craziness, of not being really clear about what is going on. And with some people, it's so extreme, especially someone who is suicidal is coming to you. You have to have an understanding, and the training that you have. The way that I work with that situation will be, I don't have a protocol for it. I don't have an algorithm for that. But if they do this, this, and this, then you do this. I just meet them where they're at and do the best I can to support their basic sanity, which would be, don't end your life. Don't do that. I might joke about it a little bit. I know in your situation as a therapist with all the laws, I think you're required to report that. Isn't that the case? So I don't know if I'm required or not, but maybe. So meet them where they're at. In other words, if they're trying to fix themselves, you can go in and find out ways to work with that so that it supports them where that everybody's on a different side of the mountain, a different path, a different way of working with this. So I would appreciate it if people wouldn't jump to the conclusion that somehow people who meditate are somehow superior to people who are approaching working with their mind stream using CBT or anything. There's so many different ways. There's I had an experience with two of my students. I think they were students at the time. I don't know if they are now, but doing cranial sacral work, which is if you read any definition of that, it's not accepted. There's no proof. So modern science tends to go in and instead of saying, does this help somebody? Has this helped anybody? They would go in and say, well, there's no proof that it's helping anybody other than there's no scientific basis for it or something. Although I certainly got some help from that. Yes.
Jeez, I'm bowing. When you talk about introducing somebody to their fundamental nature, is compassion part of that? Is there any sort of warmth in that fundamental nature? Bowing.
In yours or in the one you're talking to?
All of in the basic realization of no self, no other.
Yeah. Yes, there is.
Geez, I'm bowing. In our intention to see the truth, there's a lot of meditation practice, which seems to be the foundation of what we're doing.
Yes.
Is there any way we can at least remind ourselves of that kindness, of that compassion on the path? Bowing.
Pretty broad one. So there are practices. There's a Maitri Bhavana. There's where you actually deliberately talk about that. You extend that. You have the intention to be with all things, save all beings, put others before yourself. Help me here.
I'm trying.
Of course, it's not so much. I think maybe with a therapist, someone who is teaching. Who has been taught therapy techniques, they probably are going to have kind of their own idea about that. And a really good talk with Senshu a few years back, and I don't mean to reveal your techniques here, Senshu, but I'm about to do it anyway, is you couldn't remember exactly what you were taught, but you seem to be a pretty good therapist. Didn't you say something like that to me? Yes, you did. So, but anyway, I mean, Sensu is a good therapist. She helps people. Is there scientific basis to that? I don't know if there is or not. It's just to be with people, and the compassion, it may show up as sympathy. It may show up as a feeling sorry for someone. Those are all valid emotions. I'm not here to discount anything, but ultimate compassion doesn't have a feeling dynamic to it necessarily. It can, but if it's ultimate compassion, which is about everything, you might not want the intensity of that feeling. That feeling might be so powerful the top of your head would blow off. So it's not just simple feeling for someone's plight. It's overwhelming. The nature of consciousness is vast, and everybody's doing the best they can to work with it. Go ahead.
I might try one more time, and this is a lot easier one-on-one. When I talk to you privately, this material comes out in a different way. And the one area we've talked about quite a bit is your inspiration and connecting with the community in the work that we're doing with Karma House, that we're doing with the library. And we do not teach Shikantaza in those environments. It's not helpful at this point.
Not at all.
And I'm trying to find a way to ask about or bring out that inspiration and vision you have that is very much rooted in what we're doing here at the monastery, and yet extends into the community in forms that we may not recognize as Shikantaza. Is there anything that you can say about your inspiration in helping people, or your inspiration to connect with this community?
I'd say I need to meet people where they're at, not get them to be something else, be a monk or do Shikantaza, or they may not meditate at all, or when they meditate, they may do eyes closed meditation. I say have your eyes open a little bit, and if you want to close them. But try it that way. See, try to encourage that person's consciousness to work with the contrast between eyes closed, eyes open. Quite often people would prefer to have their eyes open, but I have had people that want to close their eyes, which is similar to a more conventional mindfulness practice. So I'm all about that. If no one ever practices over in the other buildings in Karma House, which is a yoga studio, and not necessarily teaching Buddhism there, but are just trying to connect with the community in as many ways as we can through there's 2 therapy offices over there, and you teach yoga over there on occasion, and you and Kelly connect with the communities through the library, and people have come from the library, young people have come there, and they aren't I don't think you're particularly teaching them meditation at all, are you? You're just
we're teaching some sense awareness practice and traditional mindfulness and breath practices.
You try to find some pizza somewhere?
We're trying to bring them something to eat every week, and that's some of the inspiration is that we're talking with kids that are in situations that are really hard to imagine.
So completely in favor of that. That's part of what I'm the vision that I have. It's hard for me to talk about that, because the vision for me doesn't show up as a story about something. It shows up spontaneously when I meet people, when I look at the space, when I watch a squirrel run down the top of the fence. All the same thing, not separate.
Is it okay to try to help in a way that is correcting?
Yes, just like when we have somebody come up to the door asking for money, we might give them money. We might say, well, I think you need to do something. We had someone digging a hole out here and back. I don't think we even had any use for the hole. We just wanted to have them do some work. Oh, I can't remember what that fellow's name was. James, yeah, but he came for a while, so there's a little bit of correcting going on there. I'm not sure if that's the area.
In our engagement, the correcting may not be the right word, but to try to help with these basic situations of violence and hunger and abuse. Does there need to be a more active engagement than don't do anything?
Yeah, when I say don't do anything, I'm not talking about some kind of passive I'm not passive, but it needs to be, as I sometimes say, if you've not looked at your own aggression, then it's going to be difficult to work with that situation with a person who's being aggressive towards you without just giving them the same thing back that they came at you with. I'm not saying that also that someone can't do that without meditating at all. Some therapists just that I've met aren't meditators, but just have a powerful ability to just be with whatever's arising. Where that ability comes from, I don't know. I'm still.
It is addressing what I'm asking about, and I think that it's just helpful to see that there can be a more active role played, that our practice for ourselves may be less interference, but when we're invited into a space where we're seeing such difficulty, that we can engage and be active.
Yes. So I can continue. Yes.
And does there become a point where therapy could be harmful, or I don't know if harmful is the right word, but not helpful to our meditation practice?
I don't know if I would go that far. I would say that anything's possible if the therapy is trying to get you to change, to be a different person, to uplift you in some way. There could be some value to that, but that would be so very, very personal that only you would really know. That therapist isn't going to know for sure. They don't know what you experience. And this meditation teacher can't really know what it is you're dealing with. That's why we've been talking for a number of years. You know how I work with those situations. I may not say in the classical sense agree with what's happening, but also I'm not so completely full of myself that only I know what you should do next. We do that together. I like to say that it's very mutual. There's some people I like to tell what to do and I don't, right? I like to pick and choose them. Yes, sir.
So
I didn't know you were the sir. Can you tell by the way my voice is bouncing off your mask?
basically, yes.
Okay, I thought so.
No, it's funny because yesterday Rumi and I had a very similar conversation that took me aback. Anyway, talk about
For another time, we can. Go ahead, Sano.
If I went into the situation where Chiazan and Kelly are, and I heard some of these situations, and a child asked me for help as an attorney who works in the domestic violence space quite
Yes.
often, what is a teaching that you would give me as someone who has the capacity to assist in a way that works well with what we're doing here?
Cool.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I would say that I would put it back in your court. You're the attorney, but I would say for your ability to be able to do that, spend a lot of time, take it out of gear, sit down and watch the movement in the mind that is not particularly involved with working with them. Just your own particular, get to know yourself, get to know your own negativities, positivities, without interfering with them. If you interfere, then we might have some success, but the fundamental success that we need is to see what is fundamentally true. And here we get off in a direction that maybe some therapies are going in that direction that I don't know about. I know there's some psychedelic therapy out there that I've been hearing about that it's very interesting to me, because that has a way of breaking down, whether it's psilocybin or other kinds of there's a fancy word for it is ecstasy, but I don't know the technical word.
MDMA.
Yeah, MDMA. Isn't that being used in therapy in some way? So, but that's a way where one person who's a student of mine it's a very structured situation where you use that and you actually face the person, and I think you have your eyes closed. Is that true? You don't know about it. Okay. Well, you're not the person. That's probably why you don't know.
But I know.
You know people. You know people who know people. That's kind of like my situation. So coming back to Sano, to your question, I would say it's so completely situational that it's not that you can't do something and then 3 days later look back and say, oh, I should have maybe said that a little bit differently, or maybe I should have waited a little while before I jumped right on on the ox cart there. So there, in that way, there are misunderstandings. You could call them mistakes. I don't know if that's helpful, but just misalignment with something. But you will get better and better at that the more you practice, and the more. And so, if you want to call that improvement, go ahead. I just don't teach improvement, and the reason I don't teach it is there isn't a solid being that can improve. That doesn't mean there can't be improvement. How much did that help you?
It is a step in a certain direction. How's that for a lawyerly answer?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes,
Beyond bowing. If I am looking for relative relief off the cushion from the suffering of mind or body, like therapy or a protocol, a plan,
yes.
am I in a sense leaving the spiritual path or setting up odds?
No. And if I were to go down the line there, you could, this is up to you, but you could talk to, find a therapist who's also a meditator. They wouldn't even have to be a part of this community. You could find someone to talk to. Maybe it's somebody in your family. It might be somebody in the community. It might be the teacher, and it might not be. So I think this is why it makes it so difficult, and why it is even more difficult if we buy into some kind of protocol or right way to do it, as opposed to this or that. So, but I don't think you can make a mistake. If the intention is to help yourself and help others and to be as clear as possible, I think the intention will take care of you. And then you'll have the insight to see this direction may not be so workable. You won't necessarily come in and criticize anyone else who's doing that, but it might not be for you.
In bowing, I have a different question. As we find ourselves in caregiver type roles, maybe a therapist or a youth leader, a healthcare professional of any kind, how do we navigate that? I'm seeing it as a boundary of no meddling when we are being faced with such atrocity and suffering. How can we go into that? How can we go into that with this teaching of no meddling, which is
okay? So the meddling part, what I'm saying here is we need to be quite aware of how much we presume we know what the problem is, and we go into it based on our projection of what the problem is. That's why it's so important to not meddle, but that doesn't mean turn and run the other way. It might mean step right into it, step further. How do you mean? How does this feel for you? How are you working with this right now? Is there anything that you're doing that's giving you relief from this? I'm talking about someone who's been abused 3 years ago, who's still suffering. You follow me a little bit? So to go in and work with that in a way that is respectful of the confusion, because you have no idea what they're going through. But it's very important to be with them, sit with them, very aware of their body language. When I say language, I'm not saying it's like listening to someone speak Polish. Just listen to it. You don't have to understand it. With Polish, you have to understand it. Body language, you do not have to understand. If you go into understanding body language, you start to think you know what everybody's doing by the way they're standing or the way they're holding their arms. This is a big misunderstanding. It's not that there isn't a little bit of truth there, but there's not enough to make a protocol up or an algorithm that says that all you have to do is look at the algorithm and you'll know what is happening with everybody, and whether they're covering things up or whether they're being genuine with you or not. So receive. And here we go back to my particular bias, is the way you train yourself to receive is receive whatever arises in your mind without adding anything to it. If something arises in your mind and you add, you judge, you put anything on it, blame them, him, her, this situation, blame yourself, anything but just receiving the negativity that shows up, we tend to go in circles and possibly make things worse with the intention that we want to help because we want to be right. We want to be the one who helps. Be very respectful of someone's confusion. and ask them about it. You might find that if you ask them, you might start to get a different understanding of what is happening with them. More time spent on receiving. You could say, before you take them into surgery, let's really talk to them a lot and find out a lot about them, get to know them, have lunch with them, spend some time with them. More about that's a good area to question in, because I'm not, when I say don't meddle, I'm not saying shut down and don't do anything, stay there. Just the same thing in Sano's situation. His, since he's an attorney, it might be quite a bit different, but there's still a lot of room to really investigate what is the foundational issue or problem that's happening there, and how is that being handled with that person in that moment, even though it might have happened a long time ago.
Beyond bowing. So if we are watching ourselves march into something with somebody, there's a curiosity, there's some lot of receiving going on, maybe if I can't hook up the question part right now. Thank you.
I have time. If you're going into,
So if we if we're watching ourselves march into that, not march into it, but just kind of go into that situation with a person
yes,
where there's a lot of suffering. And in the midst of that, well, for myself, there's these thoughts that come in that are like, don't meddle, don't do that, and I'm how
go ahead. I'm doing right now what I'm telling you to do.
can we ever really be sure or know if we're meddling or not?
Probably not. But the intention not to meddle will take it quite a ways, so that you can get closer to the actual area that is infected or is sore or is the issue, rather than something about the issue where you start to fix symptoms instead of the actual core problem. That's why sitting practice of meditation, forget Buddhism. I mean, it's hard for me to do that, but just train your mind so you can see. So when you smell, taste, hear, touch, think, anything that shows up in the mind stream, so that you are not bullshitting yourself because you're afraid, or because you're afraid of being wrong, or you're afraid of meddling. The fear of meddling is pretty powerful. So it will keep you on your proverbial toes to see, so that you know that what you're doing with that is going to be something that's coming out of your awareness. You probably need to be supportive of this person in this way or that way, without necessarily giving them advice that they need to do this or that. Like, would you jump to a conclusion if somebody came to you and said, my psychiatrist wants me to do electroshock therapy, what do you think I should do?
That's a hard one. That's a hard one for me. I might.
You might. Did you say mice or might?
I might.
You might say, yes, go ahead and do that.
I might say, please consider other things.
Or you might say, please consider other things. Oh, okay. Well, it's pretty difficult to just come to a conclusion when somebody asks you a question like that. I'll take one more from you, and that's it.
Beyond bowing, why is it so terrifying to, I mean, I can't know if I'm leading with awareness particularly, but in those caring situations where you're going into a difficult space, why is it so terrifying to lead with awareness?
Because awareness is vulnerable and unprotected. It's like walking into a dark woods with no flashlight. So if you got a flashlight, at least you know where the trees are. But if you're walking there with no flashlight, you have to be very sensitive in contrast. And if you have a bright light, which is a symbol for your concepts, your ideas, your judgments, your standards, who's right, who's wrong, you can really see what this is, then you will navigate it like that. But what you do is you miss the spaces between things. In other words, you miss the actual structure of the idea that is arising as you should do this or you should do that, but you can't do that. So, and that quite often is layered with fear. Hope for something better, fear of something worse. Go slow. Go slow. Take your time. If you're around me very much, you'll see that I'm very slow, which can easily be mistaken for laziness. Would you say? But it's not. Yes, sir.
Dodo bowing. I had two questions.
Yes.
One is in the phrase when you say someone might not be ready to do this.
Yes.
What do you mean with that if it's not setting that up as a higher, more profound thing? Bowing.
It's just it's not higher, more profound. It's just that there's other things that need to be done. So they're not ready for this. It would be just like even though I've practiced the practice I practiced the most was tantric practices over many, many years. I teach them a little bit, but not much. Well, I teach a very simple practice. Sit down, hold still, observe. There's no fancy cosmology or deities or mudras or things that you have to do that have to do with the connection between the body and the mind and the speech. But we do a little bit of that. So when I say they're might not be ready for that, that's not judging them particularly. It's just saying that they may need to work with us in a different way. And just like if somebody comes to me and I can't give personal examples because it's confidential stuff, but somebody comes and says, I just want to do this with art. I don't want to do this with meditation. What am I going to say to him? What do you think I would say? Do you know what I would say? You have any idea what I would say? Spit it out. You don't know, because I don't know. I don't teach know this, and I don't teach do this, don't do that. But I can tell you that I have said to that person, paint. How about meditation? Well, if you meditate, but you want to paint. And I mean it. And are they somehow less or doing? No, I have no idea what your karma is, what that person's karma is. I have no idea what it is, but if somebody comes in as a student, who might not be a student very long, but I can't teach them how to paint. Can't even do it myself. But if they come and present that, and then I see there's a genuine person who's here, who is sincere. I have a pretty good bullshit detector, having looked at this for a long time. So I can see it in other people. And I can see when somebody is not bullshitting themselves. They just need to do this way or that way. And is that what you're asking me? And you won't have a standard for how to do that. Each person, the shape of people's minds as it appears to you, if you're familiar with how your mind is shaped, you'll be much more clear about other people's minds. And why is it? Why is that? I'm getting a little bit away from our topic here, but I'm saying you're not really separate from anyone. And some people know this intuitively. Really good therapist knows this intuitively. It might scare them because then they're worried about their identity. But I'm not worried about anybody's identity, because there is no such thing as a separate identity. That's the reality that I'm looking at, and that's how I'm able to even sit up here and presume to even function as a teacher, because I certainly am not a therapist. I think some therapies are very interesting the way they work. The Center for Feeling Therapy back in the early 70s, which I thought about going there, was also Arthur Janov's book, Primal Scream, was using expression to get rid or to expunge your negativity. And so this is something John Lennon and Yoko Ono practice quite a bit. Some of their music sounds like primal screams. And so right, wrong, what, I don't know what it is. I didn't go in that direction, but I studied it. I looked at it. Transactional analysis, I'm okay, you're okay, that kind of thing has a certain dynamic there that works. Just like Byron Katie, when she talks about ask 4 questions, turn it around, using it conceptually. But even she has, not too long ago, has begun to encourage her students, people that are practicing her particular way of working with consciousness that's wrapped up in negativity, is to encouraging them to meditate also, besides that 4 question situation. Yes.
Joe going. In a lot of drug rehab therapies and
Yes.
in different groups like that, there's just a known enemy, like we need to stop doing drugs.
Yes.
And the whole thing's based on succeeding at that or working
Yes.
towards that. Why doesn't that go far enough?
What do you mean by far enough?
Is that still a mundane path?
It's I don't know how helpful it is to come and judge this and judge that. That's part of it. Maybe it looks like I'm doing. I've even said this is just a chunk of wood. I don't believe in Buddhism. Buddhism is the Buddha's teaching from 2,500 years is a path to realize your true nature, to realize what this is, not something to believe in. It's just even the word Buddhism is just means awake. And so there's all kinds of ways of working with something like addictions, which it sounds like that's what you're talking about. And you know, you can say from some experience, some of it's personal, but you know, we just meet it where it's at. Maybe you can stop doing that altogether. Maybe you need to stop it for 3 weeks. Maybe you need to get some space. Maybe you need to play around, not the entertainment kind of playing, but play around with that. And how you do that, it needs to come from you. I'm not going to be able to lay something on you, but we talk about it together. Don't you notice the mutuality of that, of how that works? So right and wrong are just extra. They're not helping anybody. Success and failure get in the way of really working with the consciousness, with the awareness, when it is tied in with the body, which is not separate from the consciousness, and it is operating in terms of being the conventional word is addicted or stuck on something. Stuck on, you need, when things get bad, you need to do this. Once in a while, people will go and meditate when they feel bad. Other times they'll meditate first, then feel bad. You notice that? More about it? Go ahead.
Maybe another way to ask it is you don't set it up as just like, don't do this, and it's not this absolute thing. What does setting it up like that allow us to see that locking down on that as a problem covers up?
Anytime, if we fundamentally, let's say, ultimately, I can make one statement: we have no control. If you think you have control, then this is the very nature of confusion, of wars, war and peace, life and death, up and down, back and forth, good and evil, all the polarities. Control, no control. You actually have more control if you don't try to control anything. I can't remember her name. She was a teacher, wrote a book called, I can't even remember the name of the book. I don't even know what she said. Yes, I do. I'm not that bad off. She said, look which way the river is flowing and then tell the river to flow that way. What was her name? Barry Stevens. Watching the river flow. So it was like just align yourself with the energy that's already there, because you're really not separate from any energy anywhere, nor are you the same. So you can't really get this incredible boost from the consciousness for your ego to feel like a supreme being or something, or like you're a deity. Isan
bowing. I want to return to the talking about working with teenagers, because I'm back in the alternative high school in Traverse City.
Please do.
So, and when you and I initially talked about it, you recommended I start with Shikantaza, and I have done that. It's difficult for them. So here's my question. You teach little kids how to meditate, and you say you ring the bell, and then 30 seconds or a minute later, you ring it again, and you have them get up and they dance around. With teenagers, there's a storm of negativity that's always in their mind. And to sit in Shikantaza and receive that negativity is very difficult. Is there a similar way that you can think of as a technique to give them a break from that difficulty, but yet introduce them to the concept of inviting it or receiving it? I'm sorry, bowing.
Only you would know, but let me make some suggestions. Start them out with sitting still and introduce them to it, in a way that you say you're trying to see more deeply, and you can get them to agree with you. We all know how hard it is to really think about anything. and get any clarity. It just feels more and more confusing, especially if the problem itself is totally unworkable. You could bring them in that way and say, so let's do something. Let's just unplug it. Don't even call it meditation. As soon as you use the conventional name of anything, people immediately go to what the society or the culture says that means. Don't do that. Use some other example. We've got a hot plate and well, they might not know what a hot plate is. Let's see, we've got I can't even think of anything that would be conventional. Maybe hair dryer. Yeah. Most of us, the hair dryer is running our whole life. Just the mind is running and running and running all the time, heating up, cooling off, heating up. So we're gonna pull the plug, or at least try to pull the plug on that. We're gonna sit very still, and we're gonna start with a bell. We're gonna end with a bell, and we're gonna start out with sitting a minute and a half. Make it an uneven number, and you understand why it's that way. Then go. And then stop, and then talk about it a little bit. How was that? What did that feel like? And then make it give it short, so someone doesn't go into some kind of a diatribe or a dithyrambic explanation of all the various things that arose from butterflies to muskrats in their mind. In that, because some people really want to express themselves, don't let them do that. In other words, say, just like you have a minute to say what happened, and then everybody does that, and then go back and sit for 3 minutes. Do it very gradually. Don't do 20 minutes, half an hour. Are these people 15, 16, 17?
Yes,
Yeah.
17.
17. That's still youth. I think you can't really set up an area where someone is an adult. We're going to do that. Then I would say about 29 to 30 to 31. Before that, you're just a child.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be allowed to drink or smoke or drive a Corvette.
He's unbowing. Sometimes they're very interested in techniques that they've read about or heard about, like chanting or breath work. What would be your recommendation on working with my response to that, my intuition, or things that I've heard of myself bowing?
You could do that so that they don't feel, they feel like they're just getting served this one dish, this one mindfulness dish, and tell them they can have their eyes open or closed. Give them that choice. Maybe I didn't say that to you before, but I'm saying it now. and then say, okay, we'll do that. Now let's do what is conventionally called chanting, and then give them a syllable. And it doesn't have to be a traditional religious syllable like om or hum or something like that. Ah isn't a bad one. You could say ah, or you could say bad. And if you don't end it with the D, you might have a lot of sheep coming in the room. So you have to end it with D. So and then just do that for a very short period of time, and then stop, and then go back maybe to just awareness, and then go back to a very short discussion of the thing, and then back to the awareness again. And then maybe do a little bit of concluding there, like, does this interest you? Do you want to continue in this area? There's lots of room to explore in this area. Anybody interested? And you might find maybe half of the people there might be interested in continuing to go. And you could also ask them for another direction. Do they see, in other words, some interaction with them, a Q&A kind of thing with these young people? Is there some area of it that that you were interested in the response from here that I didn't get or say?
Oh, that's all very helpful. And one thing I did want to add, because it came to me in the discussion, but the particular teenager who participates in shikantaza the most and most effectively, she values it. She's been through drug rehab and a lot of therapy.
She's been what?
Been through drug rehab and a lot of therapy. So that underlying foundational work of therapy with kids, there seems to be, that seems to be kind of a training wheel for being able to value meditation and do it.
And I'm totally in favor of that. It might be by some of the, because I'm usually talking to people who are already meditators. So I want them to keep meditating. So I'm biased in that area. So if somebody starts to say, well, I think I need to go back into therapy and not meditate anymore, then I might, it would depend on who it is and what our relationship was, what the chemistry was between this teacher and that student. I might say, okay, well, go back and do that for 6 months or a year. See how that is. In other words, put it back on that person. So rather than go in and say, no, you have to keep doing shikantaza. Some people, I even have them close their eyes. Usually I say, open them if you can. But if you really feel like you need to close your eyes, I trust my students' intuition about this. I might insist on having your eyes open at some point, but initially I might say, well, close your eyes then. See how that is. Close your eye. If you're going to sit for an hour or 2 hours, close your eyes for the first hour and then open your eyes. I have found, I don't know about other people who've taught meditation, but found that quite often if people do much eyes open meditation, they realize there's something there. I don't know if you can put it into words. When you close your eyes, it's very similar to resting or going to sleep. And it can be quite pleasant to do eyes closed meditation if you're doing it a lot and you have scanning the body techniques, satipatthana, and so on. Have ways of doing it, like was taught by S.N. Goenka. Very powerful, very transformative. Completely changed the lives of the inmates that he talked to in prisons in India. It's just that it doesn't last very long. So you have to keep returning to that to try to reinvigorate that. Yes, sir.
Sometimes when you're speaking to just meditators or you're not talking about this topic, someone might ask a question where they're looking to correct something or feel better, and you say that's the mundane path.
Yes. And it
is that setting the mundane path up as like less valuable than the spiritual path?
That's why I'm doing this, is because because I could see where I'm biased. I say it, I'm biased. I want you to realize your true nature. I don't want you to just be temporarily happy, because it's temporary. Death is coming. You've been warned. How's that? Been warned. It's coming. There's anything coming but death. A lot of other things in between. Ice cream, lots of it. Indian food, thanks to Varun. I remembered his name. Pretty good for an old fellow. Yes, go ahead.
If we
Not
meet
Varun, me. Go ahead.
if we meet someone in their mundane path,
Yes,
and we meet them where they're at,
yes.
is that the spiritual path?
Of course. If you're on the spiritual path and you understand it as a path that transcends everything, and sees that this is an illusion, even if you're just doing it intellectually, everything is the spiritual path. Everyone is a Buddha. That's not something you believe in. It's just something you hear and you practice it. Not that they're the historical guy. No, but they're the awakening that the Buddha pointed to. Everyone is awake. They just don't know it. And that's what this person is here to encourage you to do, to see your true nature. But you may need, I mean this sincerely, you may need to work with a therapist so that those areas of the mind that are making it more difficult for you to relate with the truth of the Buddha's teachings. Suffering, life is suffering. Some people have been maybe not abused in this lifetime, but maybe in another lifetime. Do I believe in that? Not necessarily, but there's something going on besides this lifetime. And you could call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it that. So, yes, meet people where they're at. Spiritual path. If you're on the spiritual path and you're practicing the Buddha's teaching as you see it, and as you're guided by your teacher and by your community, and everything is. You might meet someone and talk to them for weeks because you're involved in some project. They might not even know you're a monk, or they might not even know you're a Buddhist. It just doesn't come up because you're receiving what they're doing and what they're saying, and you're relating to them where they're at. Yes, sir.
Andy Bowing, with therapy, there's a lot of outflows and things like that.
Yes.
How does that not just lead to more circularity?
And with practicing meditation and actually doing therapy too.
Mm-hmm.
It could, but it's the awareness of the circularity, not stopping it. So that would be a good thank you. So that would be a good way of being more aware of circularity by actually working with a therapist. They may not know that they're looking at the Buddha, but you do. You hear that? I know you hear it because I can see your ears are not plugged. You see what I'm saying there? See how kind of a meaningless statement that is? They may not. What did I say? They may not. Can you remember? They may not. No, they're looking at the Buddha, but you do. Choke it out, explain that to him. Are you going to explain it to him? Oh.
I have a question.
Let me see if I can't get him to retread his tires. You see that? You have a further question? I don't mean to.
I mean, I don't. What you said was helpful.
Reflecting, that's a good question. And I thought it was just an excellent response, didn't you? See how I kept from getting trapped? Go ahead.
Mazuka bowing. Sometimes you talk about being aware of how when you label something, say just call it depression, it shuts down on continuing to investigate it or really look into it.
Yes. Yes.
I want to caveat and say that the therapists that happen to be your students, just from talking to them, I can tell they may not be super focused on labels, but a lot of therapy is focused on a diagnosis and then how can we, along the lines of what Andy was talking about, or you're saying you might look at the circularity, how can we work with labels and judgments that come from, yes, somebody whose intention may be to help you, but
I think it's so, again, that fancy word that I go to all the time is so situational. I would say less is better. If you don't need a therapist, then don't have one. But if you need one, then if you need some kind of help in that area by someone who is working with a particular, cognitive behavioral kind of stuff is very conceptual, at least my understanding of it. I have not studied it. I don't have a degree in any of that, but it works with the conceptual stuff. More about that? We can ask a therapist here. Got two of them at least.
well, I might have a question that maybe they can weigh in on, but
All right, get ready.
it
Get ready,
seems
people.
like those labels help them in their practice, help them sort of
Be
come up with a
therapists.
protocol or
Okay.
bill something to insurance. So, is there a perspective that we can have on labels and judgments? Allow people to use them if it helps them help you, but not buy into them. How can we not?
I'm going to
You've
get
got a
some help.
professional telling you something.
Okay. Kelsey, did you hear that? Can't hear you. Harrison, can you understand what she's saying?
Not a clue.
Something's rattling. Chazon's trying to adjust the rattler receiver.
It may be her connectivity.
Yeah, he's blaming you. That's your fault. So can you straighten that up, or do you just need to send can't do it? Okay. So sent you still here? Where is she?
Here.
How would you respond to that? I mean, I can say something about it too, but since you're a therapist,
I lost the question. I heard it, but I can't recall what the basic question was.
what are you basically asking? And we'll both.
I'm considering how therapy or some kind of relative help can help somebody when
Can you
they're
hear?
suffering.
Okay, she hears you. Go ahead.
But the labels could shut down
Give
investigation.
me an example of a label.
You have depression disorder,
Okay.
and you just
Yeah.
label that.
Okay.
is there a way to work with those labels, still maybe receive the benefit without buying into those labels?
Okay, good question. How does that look to you, since you?
Going, each of those labels has a long or short list of symptoms that would make that label fit for a person's experience.
Are you and
They-
Kelsey using the same computer?
Oh, is it not working?
Oh, it's working fine, and we just can't understand you.
Oh,
It's going, okay.
oh,
Yeah, you're not doing that though. You're not talking like that.
not intending to.
That's pretty clear. So take what you just said and edit it down, or call Paul Sean. He'll do it for you.
Okay. I think that those labels can be helpful to have a common language
Common language.
and to use those as maybe a basis to look deeper into what the experience is.
Okay. Look,
Telling.
basis to look deeper. Kelsey, you want to try? No? Oh, okay. You could type something in. I don't see any other therapists. I was thinking maybe Kelly was here, but I don't see her. Okay, so, yes.
Is meditation circular?
It's going to go through a lot of circularity before it eventually doesn't do that, but eventually it doesn't do anything. More?
That question, just to say, is coming out of, it looks like when I look at therapy and meditation as the title, that it could be looked at as circular path and a straight path. And I'm wondering if that's a misunderstanding.
I wouldn't do anything with it. I'm endeavoring to talk about therapy as it's taught all over the place or conducted, or people receive help in using that particular dynamic. Psychotherapy, all the different therapies that came up 100 years ago with Freud and Jung and Adler, those early ones, right up to and including literally thousands of different ideas about how to work with the mind, including electroshock therapy. You just need to go in there and give them a bolt of lightning, and then everything straightens up. And it might even do that to some extent, situationally. But I wouldn't go in and, because just the word meditation is too generic, and just the word therapy, it's just too. There's no one therapy. There's no one meditation. Even shikantaza, which I teach, is different for each person. If you go and sit and face the wall and practice shikantaza, and Juzan faces the wall, practices shikantaza, or just anyone else, Nishikai, you're all working with the mind in a different way. You have a very simple approach to it: sit down, hold still, watch the movement of the mind. But how that shows up for any one of you is going to be completely unique and different. That's been my experience talking to you or working with my own practice over the last number of years. Go ahead.
Does our intention transform any modality into a spiritual path?
Well, if you have the intention to see the truth, no matter what, and you stop looking for proof, if you're looking for proof, it's the mundane path. Not wrong. It could be a very highfalutin form of the truth. Read the philosophers and people who work with strong intellectual premise about the way things are. Friedrich Hegel, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and all the existentialist people who are looking at what this was and trying to explain what it was using concepts and ideas. Not wrong. It's just amazing descriptions, amazing ability to think, to make circular thought look like a straight line. But it's still thought, it's still ideas, it's still concepts trying to get something and turn it into something else, turn it into an understand. Here's the misunderstanding, and here's the understanding. That's polarity. The Dharma is not doing that. The Buddha 2,500 years ago looked at it and said, the teaching there was there isn't anything. Teaching of emptiness, yet it's still there. So, what does that mean? What can you do with that conceptually or psychologically to squeeze some kind of accuracy or proof that it's real or unreal? Or you can't, or you could. But the intention, actually, there's no intender. Nothing was intended. Eventually, it just completely collapses. Why would you do such a thing? Why not just study Dogen or something and live in a pup tent? I got a few people to smile. I'm one of them.
玉红报应。
Young, go ahead.
I have a follow-up question about Andy's asking regarding the outflow. When one sees the therapist, if they are aware of reinforcing the outflow, is that a concern? Bowing.
The main thing I come back to is awareness. The structure of cause and effect, this caused that, this is aware, this isn't aware, this is covering this up, this is all of those things. You just need to be aware of it. It will, because nothing lasts. So anything that shows up as a problem will not last. But if you fool around with it, if you push it away, it's a problem. Or if you try to support it or figure it out, I'm not saying that you couldn't work with something that was problematic. There's different ways of working with that. I was talking about addictions, where you say, okay, you have an addiction, you're working with that. Okay, let's take a week off. Let's just or 3 days or one whole day. My addiction many years ago was smoking cigarettes, and I would keep doing that until I finally just stopped. Just don't do that anymore. But it was very hard, very nicotine's a very difficult addiction. Not saying it's the hardest. Probably there are a lot of other ones that are much worse, but it was hard for me. Sano. No.
Thank you.
Yuhan.
Bowing.
You have another one, Yuhan?
Yes, I do actually. My second question is my fear of messing up my students' experience of trying Shikantaza is very strong. They have been very good with just basic mindfulness practice. They know exactly the posture, they feel good. Most of the time when I ask them, either they are tired or they feel stressed about the homework load. So
how old are they?
They're teenagers.
And how long do you have them sit meditation for?
For mindfulness, basically it's about 5 minutes.
Oh, good.
Usually before the class, yeah.
Well, don't teach them Shikantaza. Just teach them, let them close their eyes and do whatever they want to do. Yeah, don't teach them that. But
in the future, if I want to introduce them this practice, I'm afraid of messing up their experience of feeling very rigid or feeling
you want
like
some help?
Forced. Yes, I want to hear yours.
You're not that important. Their karma is the weight, the force, the intensity of the karma of these young people is way more powerful than anything you could do or not do. Your intention to be good, to be kind, to fundamentally give them something to do besides just indulge in their thought patterns. They can just sit still for a while. So I think you're doing fine. You don't need results. You just need the intention. Chisho, do you have a question?
Thank you, Bowing.
You're welcome.
Chisho Bowing. No, I was going to read out Kelsey's answer to the question you asked about label.
Yes, please.
She says, for some people, a label can help them understand the resistance they have to finding paths of healing. So it can help them observe from a new angle.
Yeah, I like that. like that. Didn't that question come from you? Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think it looks to me like it takes skill to use labels skillfully, like
It does.
suggestions, and that not everybody has that skill.
No, they don't. Further question?
No,
Aren't you concerned about the people that don't have that skill?
sure.
Why don't you help them?
How? How can I help them?
What do you got in mind right now?
Keep practicing.
Talk about it. Shut up and help them. I'm watching the body language because I know that's what's happening. What's happening? What's happening right now? You feel picked on?
No, I
Oh,
just
good.
have no idea what you're
Do
suggesting.
you think
when you
that
say
Kelsey's
help them.
picking on you?
No, was she? Did I miss it? I have
No,
no
she was-
idea what you're.
She was not.
asking.
No, I'm just showing you what circles look like. I don't mind circles. I can talk, I don't need to make any sense at all. The whole world is functioning out of circles. And but the problem is the fixation on this part of the circle is right, this other part of the circle is wrong. It's astonishing understanding, and it's very simple. But ego is afraid that it's going to turn up as a fool, so it doesn't want to be wrong. So it would rather be go in circles. You don't have to help those people. Reflect on that. Yes, sir.
Bowing, you are admittedly biased about Shikantaza. You say that all the time.
Yeah.
How can you have that bias and see something that's really helpful, but still give people the space to do something that might look kind of off to you?
It doesn't look off. It looks like they're doing exactly what they need to do, which is not practice Shikantaza. I have people come here and swear allegiance and I love you, Sokuzan, and I want to practice forever, and I'm going to be whatever, and then just go the other direction. Not even say anything about it. They're just gone. I don't even hear from them. Some people I haven't heard from in years. Are they incorrect? No, they're doing what they need to do. They did this as much as they could. Now they're doing something else. But there are no mistakes. If you think they're mistakes, then that's where wars come from. Some people are wrong and they need to be punished. Go ahead.
How do we work with our own practice, at least speaking for myself, when I might have that bias and look down on the way someone else is working with their situation?
Just be aware that you're looking down on it. You don't have to fix it, because if you fix it, then the looking down on it goes into hiding. You're still doing that. It just looks like you're not. You know what I'm talking about. Of all people. I mean, you're just constantly looking down on everybody. So you have plenty of opportunity to see what a terrible person you are. Is that helpful? Andre, why aren't you smiling? Lost in thought? Okay. Is there a final anything? Is there anything about therapy and meditation where that there's still some kind of understanding that we need to address? Or do you have anything, especially from the therapist? Oh, Milka, go ahead.
Milka Bowing, are there certain characteristics when we go into therapy or some practice that's not Shikantaza that we should look for that might be helpful in our awareness practice?
I'm not sure. Are you in therapy?
Milka Bowing, I was just thinking of when I had done brain spotting with Senchu, how that opens up some area I wouldn't even have looked at or thought about, or
No, there's
and it
another
just
kind
seems
of
to release something that I don't even know what it is.
So I would talk to Senju about it. You have 1 session, 2 sessions, 3 sessions? I would go back and talk to her about that. That's a particular way of she has a particular way of working with that approach. And I don't know if I've ever conveyed the feeling to you, Senchu, that I don't approve of brain spotting, and that I think that people shouldn't do that. They should do shikantaza instead. See?
Did she shake her head?
Huh?
Did she shake her
That's
head?
not- She's shaking her head no that she didn't shake her head. So we got it? Oh, the attorney mind is about ready to kick in here. No?
Always.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, I would go back and do some more of that brain spotting, if that's something that is opening up. I can't address that because I don't teach it, don't practice it. I'm very interested in it. Have you done that with me at all, that brain spotting? How did I do? No brain. My brain had spots all over. It was full of spots. Yes?
It was good.
Right. It was good. I'm glad to hear that. Yes, sir.
Sort of bowing. Something I noticed, like when you go through court ordered help, they require you to get therapy or go to 12-step programs. And there's only a really small group of things that they'll like view as like that you're doing what you're being asked to do.
Like 12-step.
Like 12-step. Is there any way for the meditation practice to show up structured to where the courts would approve of coming to a place like this for those hours?
Yeah, it's possible. That's why we have two attorneys here. Aren't you guys gonna figure that out?
If you want, yeah. We have
Yeah.
a drug court here.
Huh?
If you want, yeah, I can work on that. We have a drug court here.
Okay. Talk to him about it. Shoda's gonna come and talk to you about that. Lots of things that can be done, the legal restrictions on all kinds of things, and this could be one of them where this might not be for everyone, but this might be a way that some people could work with that in this kind of a community or this kind of a practice. These particular kinds of forms, not for everyone. But it doesn't mean that the ones that it isn't for, that they're somehow less, and we're these great monks, and everybody else needs to, feel humble. I'll take one final question if there is one. Otherwise, we can pack it up. No questions anywhere? Susan, you don't have any questions? All this time you've been sitting there with no questions? That's very strange.
Susan Downing, I'm in my car, so
Oh,
hard to ask a question, I think.
okay.
But I do have one, actually. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you. I just can't hear the question.
So my question is, I know you talk a lot about the therapy and meditation, and yet, the Theravadins, there are a number of those teachers who are psychologists, Jack Kornfield, Tara Brach, I think Jack Kornfield's wife, and then there was that guy Epstein, who is this Buddhist psychiatrist, bestseller, the therapy. In other words, I guess what's confusing to me, the question is I never heard the issue discussed before, and I'm wondering what it is about the two that brings it up so much with you, I guess is the way to say it, Bowing.
You mean therapy and meditation?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just there's lots of different kinds of meditation. I don't teach what Tara Brach or Jack Kornfield teach. We call it meditation, but it's not the same thing. And also probably right here in our situation here, whatever Senchu is doing with the brain spotting, and what Kelsey's doing with her the kinds of therapy that she's working with people, might be just completely different ways of doing the whole thing. There's lots of different kinds of therapy. I think the last time I counted was maybe 5-6 years ago. I counted up what was listed in Wikipedia. I think it was up to 180. It was listed in Wikipedia. I went in there today. It was 500. So it took me a few hours to read all those. So I think I need to let you go so you can drive. I see all those trees moving by and it looks like you're not looking at them. Okay. Yes. Let's bring this to the conclusion that usually happens when there's something bad.